Hello everyone and welcome back. I did finally remember that my YouTube channel exists just in time for 3.5 and just in time to go over the new Atlas. I wanted to break this down for you guys a little bit because the new Atlas is really interesting. It has a lot of implications for the new league going forwards, and while there's a lot more stuff coming alongside it, like the Syndicate and all the master changes and all of that stuff, I think the Atlas is going to be pretty damn big change as well, and I want to talk about it a bit. So with that said, we've got a list here of all the different maps and their tiers in case I need to refer to that to, actually confirm that I'm guessing a tier correctly on a map. And we've got the Atlas in glorious full screen right here. So I've got some points I want to go over. Let's get started. The first thing that I want to mention is that with the reshuffling of the Atlas is not just changing of tiers, it's also changing of locations. So there's going to be a lot of impact on sextant use and going to be a lot of impact, well, mostly on sextant use. Impact on completion as well early on in the league. And with that, let's segue into the changes to red maps, because if you can look here in the middle, within this ring, there are connections that were not previously available between each quadrant of red maps. It's got a few implications. One, growing a red elder is very reliable. You can keep elder within only red maps if you want to. No longer do you have to jump out to yellow maps slightly to be able to get them around to other portions of the red map pool. So a red elder is very, very easy to do compared to last league, and it wasn't even really that hard last league, so it's a fairly trivial matter if you have a decent red map pool now. You can spawn red elder very reliably, which is kind of nice for getting 15 out of 15 memory fragments. I approve of this. Good job. Well done, GGG. I'm glad that happened. The other thing is that it's kind of nice for completion early on as well. This isn't really the recommended way to approach your Atlas, but a lot of newer players in particular, particularly players who are maybe approaching the Atlas for the first or second time, getting into red maps for the first or second time, will often be approaching from a single corner, because the way the game works, you're running, and on this Atlas actually, you're running, say, Arcade, which is now tier 8, which is interesting. That's what it used to be able to be shaped into. And you happen to get a tier 9 to drop. Ignore this connection. I think this is mistaken, because this is associating a tier 5 with a tier 9, which doesn't make any sense. You haven't get a tier 9 to drop, and you don't have any other tier 9s yet. You're out of new tier 8s to run. You haven't quite completed all of tier 8, but then you run that tier 9, and you have Temple, and so when you go and run another tier 8 on the other side of the Atlas, maybe a Temple drops, and that's your highest tier map, so you run it, and then you get a tier 10, and that's your highest tier map, so you run it, and so you sort of shoehorn yourself into approaching higher tier maps from a single corner because you're running only the highest tier maps you have available, and you're always wanting to run new content because that's just naturally what players want to do. Not the best way to approach the Atlas early on, by the way. If you want help with that, I would suggest checking out Carve and Engineering Eternity's very in-depth Atlas guide that they've been putting together. Obviously, the specifics are going to be a bit different now with the Atlas changing, but the theory behind it is still very sound. But yeah, that means if you do end up approaching the Atlas in a sort of incorrect, botched way, like that, let's call it, then when you end up in this corner with a bunch of these red maps, but none of these other ones, instead of having to then sort of reset, drop down to lower tier maps and farm up from the other corners, you can just go, well, I'll run this until I get, I'll run, what is this? Overgrown Shrine until I get an Ivory Temple to drop. And then with that, I can break into these red maps. Still leaves you with a gap here, but it feels a little better. You're in higher tier content more often. That's kind of a good thing. It's a bit of a band-aid patch over just a problem with how the Atlas is built in general. But a band-aid patch is better than none at all. Let's move on to the other point, or one of the other points that I wanted to cover in this video, the changes to unique map placement. A few unique maps are hit pretty heavily by the Atlas rework. First among those is Obas. Obas is pretty bad now. Torture Chamber was deleted as a map. It's no longer on the Atlas at all. So Obas, which used to be associated with it, has to be associated with a new map. It's getting thrown in with the likes of Underground Sea, which is a pretty good map. Which has been changed from a 6 to a 5 now. Not really that much of a difference, still a very good map. And as a result, Obas is now a tier 5 map, presumably. They might make it so that it works sort of like Parandus, where it just has a higher eye level and ignores the eye level the map it's associated with, but that's the exception rather than the rule. Usually unique maps are the same eye level as the map they're connected to. So that would mean that Obas, well, it definitely no longer scales up to eye level 83. It's going to have, I think it's 5 floors, so it can scale 5 levels higher. So the highest level floor in Obas will be tier 10, maybe 11. If I'm miscounting, it might have 6 floors, which means at best you're getting T11 maps out of an Obas, which is way worse than getting T16 maps out of an Obas, which is something you could previously do when Obas was associated with a tier 12. which would mean actually that it scales up to what, tier 9? Because it goes 12 to 16. So yeah, that would be 5 to 9. So Obas is not very good anymore, unfortunately, which is, it's a little sad. It's a fun map, but you're not really going to get much out of running it. Probably just run it once for completion and then be done with it. A similar thing has happened to Olmex. Olmex, the final boss, drops items that are 3 levels higher. This used to allow it to drop up to T13 maps. Now with Bone Catacombs being a T3, it's going to be able to drop up to what, T6? Or maybe T7? Because it's the native bonus of +2 to a boss. I don't know if that's additive with the 3 levels higher. It might be, which would mean actually it could drop up to T8 in that case. Still not exactly impressive. Yellow maps at best. Poor Joys does appear to still be on a tier 9. I think this is a connection made in error because according to the list, this is a 9, this is a 5. 9 and 5 should not be connected. This is probably just a mistake that didn't get caught before they sent the Atlas out. And Hologram Masters. Hologram Masters getting a nerf as well. Going from a T11 down to a T8 means that the boxes at the end will give you tier 9 and tier 8 maps at best, which is way worse than getting tier 11s, which wasn't even all that great to begin with. We're not in a very friendly meta to disfavor, so getting the disfavor card isn't great loot, and getting the mirror card doesn't happen very often, so I don't really think that farming Grandmasters will be all that good next league. We'll have to see. Not a lot of builds do that anyway. It's a fairly niche market, but still. All right, next thing I wanted to cover, some changes to maps that were within the meta and have been within the meta for a little while now. The big hitter on the list, the one that I'm sure everyone is here to hear me talk about, is the changes to burial chambers. This thing has gotten the very wrong end of the nerf bat. It's over here as a T11, as you can see, connected to Coves and Necropolis, which are not great maps to be connected to, not very good company to be in. And as well as that, it's a raw red map now, a pure red map, a natural red map, whatever you want to call it, which means that it's surrounded mostly by other red maps and one yellow. So you can no longer use white sextants on this thing. You can only use yellow and red, which are more expensive. Not really all that much better, to be perfectly honest. This is one of the problems with sextants in the first place. A lot of the good mods can happen on white sextants. You don't have that much incentive to use yellow and red ones. Maybe the Nemesis monsters drop additional currency, but that's so rare as to almost make no odds. And as well as that, it is a much higher tier map. So it's being a natural red map, that means you can't shape it, so you would have to elder it if you wanted to shape your Atlas around it, and that's got more opportunity cost than just shaping. So there's a lot of points against it now. I don't think we're going to see that much burial chamber farming. People love farming for their doctor cards, so there might still be a few diehards who give it a shot at T11, but I think probably what's going to happen is we're going to switch over to Spider Forest, which is a T5 now, and which I have forgotten the location of, or sorry, it's a T10. There it is. And we can turn this into a T15. It's still in a pretty bad spot for sextants. You can hit it with one yellow. If you shape it into a 15, then you can hit it with a red, and a red. And this wouldn't reach either with this. Pillars of Arun, I don't think reaches from that position, but it might. So at best, you're seeing 2 yellows if we're being very generous with Pillars of Arun, which I doubt this will actually reach. And at worst, we're seeing 3 reds and a yellow. So the sextants are not super favorable. The layout's not great, but maybe the allure of doctors will be enough. And it is a lot easier to shape your Atlas around a shaped T15 than trying to elder one of these maps and having the opportunity cost of your elder orb on a not very good layout, not very well placed map. Speaking of Elder Orbing, speaking of maps that are good layouts with good placements, let's talk about the Golden Boy of next league that I think is going to be one of the best maps to run, is Eldered and or probably just Eldered because shaped it's only a T7, Eldered Armory. Armory is in a great spot now. The only downside of being this close to the corner of the Atlas is that it's going to be hard to set up a Elder Blob to influence ping pong on it, but I think still possible. It's just a really small blob, the likes of which you would need to ping pong onto Armory is often unstable and could just evaporate if you get unlucky. But it's in a spot for 5 white sextants. It's got really good density, I wasn't going to say really good layout, but it's a pretty good layout. It's easy to follow once you learn it. It's just got a lot of nooks and crannies, which can be annoying for some builds, but for some isn't really a problem. And in fact, is even a boon if you're playing something like KB, which I guess isn't really super meta at the moment. Yeah, I think Armory's going to be pretty great. But let's go over some of the others. Some of the favorites from leagues gone by now. Haunted Mansion, I think, is still going to be pretty good. As you can see, it's right here. It's got a few yellow section spots, a white section spot. It's a what is that, a T6, so you can shape it to an 11, which is pretty respectable. I think Haunted Mansion is going to be in a good spot. It got the upgrade to being a red map when shaped, but it got the downgrade of not being near as many white sections. I think it'll still be just fine. You can run some Haunted Mansions if that's what you like. Underground Sea, I think, is in the same neighborhood there. It'll be just fine. It's got a white sexton, another white sexton. That is the boon of having this unique map here. The downside, obviously, is that Obas is garbage now, like I said earlier, provided there isn't some shenanigans with eye-level scaling. But the upside is that Underground Sea gets another white sexton on it, and Underground Sea is a decent map. So we can look forward to another League of Underground Sea, potentially. This is probably the other candidate for Eldering, aside from Armory. And my third candidate for Eldering is going to be Grotto. I've Eldered Grotto in the past. It's a pretty good map. Again, it's in a good spot for sextons. You can hit it with 4 or 3 white sextons and a red pretty easily if you Elder it. Shape it, then it's 3 white sections and a yellow. Grotto's got a pretty easy to follow layout. It can be a bit annoying at times, but its main advantage is that the map is absolutely massive and the density is good. So it's very easy to sustain. If sustaining Eldered maps is your worry, Grotto is your go-to. Usually in like solo self-found, if I'm going to be doing a solo self-found run, Grotto is what I would consider Eldering, because it is, in my opinion, one of, if not the easiest to sustain Elder maps. Though that was when it could get 1 more white sexton. So it's receiving a bit of a nerf now, but it'll still probably be fine. Speaking of receiving nerfs, City Square is getting dumpstered. I really don't know why. City Square was pretty good before. It wasn't amazing. It's my favorite map. That's why I'm getting all wishy-washy here. City Square is my favorite map on the Atlas to Elder. I love this map. Every time I'm in a trade league, I will Elder City Square because I mean, I ran it to 100 this league, and I'm still not tired of the damn thing. It's so pretty and bright and open, and it's easy to run, and the density is decent, and it had good sexton spots, and it's such a nice map, and now it's out in the middle of nowhere. Like, I don't know if there is a sextant that hits this. That isn't it. Probably Beach does. I don't think Fields does. Probably not Orchard. Like, I think maybe you can hit this with 2 sextants. Maybe 2 sextants, and that's just terrible. I don't know why GGG did this, but I'm very sad about City Square. Let's see, what else? Arcade is pretty good. Arcade's already pretty alright right now. That's partially because it's in a very good spot for white sections at the moment in the bottom right corner. It's not so good anymore, but it's an okay map. Keep an eye out for it. You can get some yellow sections on that bad boy. Now it's, what, a T8, so you can make it a T13 if you want to. That's pretty nice. You don't have to Elder it. You can maybe just shape it. Have Arcade as your 13 to farm some, what is it? Abandoned Wealth? It's not Hoarder. It's an Exalt card in there. I think it's Abandoned Wealth. And last on my list here that I want to talk about as far as meta maps and shaping goes is Toxic Sewer, which I believe is, let me see what tier this is. Toxic Sewer is a tier 7 now, so it's going from a 5 to a 7, which means a 10 to a 12 shaped. So it's becoming a red map. But it's being a little left out in the open there, as far as sextants are concerned. I'm actually not certain if you can hit it with sextants with any of these, which might be a problem. Either you can hit it with, like, most of them or none of them, and it's really hard for me to judge. I think somebody did a overlay on it, but I'll have to go look that up, and maybe I can confirm for you guys in the description below the video. The last thing that I wanted to hit was a slight note of disappointment, which maybe isn't the best way to end the video, but hell, we're here and I'm going to do it. That most of the red maps still seem kind of poor in terms of density and in terms of layout and in terms of just overall quality of the maps. So I think we're going to be seeing another league of running a lot of shaped maps, maybe having a soft shaped atlas where you have like a single map on a few given tiers to jump between, or even people running a hard shaped atlas and just kind of ignoring the master missions. I think it's all going to hinge on exactly how powerful those master missions are and how much of a opportunity cost you're incurring by giving up the ability to go after them and devoting your atlas to a shape strategy. Because if we just briefly look over this, like panning over a lot of these maps, a lot of them weren't even changed. The red maps were shuffled around by a tier or two, but not really too many were thrown from white maps into red or red maps into white. You know, we've got Courthouse making a visit all the way from tier 4, so that got 10 tiers worth of change. But if we look at the rest of these, Overgrown Shrine is on the same tier. Carcass went down a tier. This is the new Primordial Blocks map, so that's a tier 15, which is new and shiny. Shrine is exactly the same. Arsenal got downgraded a tier and moved from one quadrant to the other. Colosseum got downgraded a couple tiers, moved from a quadrant to the other. Malformation got downgraded a tier. Siege got upgraded a tier. Plaza turned into a tier 10, which I guess that's nice. That's not a garbage tier 14 map anymore. But what was it replaced by? Not the likes of anything particularly engaging. I guess Plaza and Courthouse sort of swapped. Obviously, Plaza didn't become a tier 4, but Courthouse is the stand-in for the tier 14 that Plaza was. But yeah, there's not that many new faces if we look around at the red maps, and that's honestly a little bit disappointing to me as someone who oftentimes goes for a completed Atlas strategy, maybe just working around one Elder map and having the rest of the Atlas completed, because I'm a little tired of the less than optimal red maps that I have to run. Things like Crystal or things like Necropolis. And yeah, we have to have worse layouts, and we have to have lower density maps with a higher density and better layout maps to feel nice. Like, I don't want every map to be the same strand with perfect density and just, you run in a straight line and you hit your buttons. That would be kind of boring. But it's also just not that entertaining to have only a very slight shift in terms of what the actual end game content is going to be. It seems like most of the changes were done to the outer edges of the Atlas, and were done to the maps that were being shaped and all that sort of thing. And that's going to be, maybe thrown into disarray a little bit. We might have a new meta around those maps. But as far as the actual end game natural red maps go that are supposed to be the end game encouraged by the game, not too many changes in those regards. So a little disappointed in that. Excited nonetheless for change in general, and excited for the new league. So I'll have more content on the upcoming league as we get more information on it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one, everybody.